In 1933, the Nazis put Margaret Sanger's books, along with those by Sigmund Freud and Havelock Ellis, on a bonfire and burned them. In 1939, uh, Margaret Sanger joined the anti-Nazi committee. She wrote to many people about how concerned she was that there was such a rising amount of anti-Semitism in Germany, and she wanted to do whatever she could, including including some of her giving financial support to try to counteract that. She also joined groups dedicated to helping Jews escape from the persecution in Nazi Germany. Okay, and she wrote to many people about how concerned she was with what was going on in there. Um, the Nazis shut down all family planning clinics. Her main cause was family planning, and she wanted women to be able to decide for themselves if they had children and when they had children. Okay, the Nazis didn't like that at all. Okay, now the thing about that is she was very anti-Nazi. The Nazis despised her, burned and banned her books, and you have people putting up these YouTube videos in which she is depicted as if she was the architect of the Holocaust. Okay, it is really bizarre how many people want to put Margaret Sanger, somebody who is trying to help women, and they often wrote to her in desperation because in those days some women were having baby after baby after baby, and their bodies were worn out. They just couldn't take it anymore. They weren't able physically and emotionally to care for children, for one after another, and they wanted her to help them, with some sort of contraception. Okay, and it was very difficult to sell abstinence because husbands tended to demand their marital rights. That was unfortunately the fact of the matter. Now, the thing about why would Margaret Sanger be put as the architect of the Holocaust? Well, like a lot of other people in those days, she did express support for eugenics. Now, that was a very common view in the pre-Nazi era, that you could apply some of the same standards to human reproduction that you would apply to um, breeding animals or breeding crops, and therefore you would get better results. That was basically the reasoning behind it. Um, and and she did say some things that are quite politically correct these days, although a lot of the quotes that are being shoved onto her were actually quotes from somebody else. Um, there's a thing about the poorest Negroes are breeding at a larger or a higher rate than others, and that actually is a quote from civil rights from the civil rights worker W.E.B. Du Bois, but it's attributed to Margaret Sanger. And there's also the idea that supposedly she said that birth control meant more children from the fit, less from the unfit. That was actually something that was written in medical and the American Medical Association Journal. She didn't subscribe to that. She actually was against that idea. She said that she did not believe in a cradle competition between rich and poor. She didn't believe that rich women should be encouraged to have more babies. Okay. Now, Uh, Other people who supported eugenics in those days included Winston Churchill, Alexander Graham Bell, Helen Keller, yes, blind and deaf Helen Keller, the previous mentioned civil rights leader W.A.B. Du Bois, and I can't think of all of them offhand, but it was a very widespread belief held by a lot of people that you could apply the same principles. And many of them, although were more enthusiastic about it than Sanger was, they actually did want to encourage like high intelligence couples to have big families, which she did not. Now, one thing she did that was wrong was she did support the decision by Justice